It was not just a military conflict. In Southeast Asia, it became a global symbol of the Cold War. The struggle between communism and democracy, and the power of public opinion. To understand why the war happened and why it still matters, we need to start at its very beginning. In the late 1800s, Vietnam was ruled by France, a colonial power that had built a vast empire around the world. The Vietnamese people resisted, but they were forced to live under colonial control. During World War II, Japan invaded Vietnam, and after the war, nationalist leader Ho Chi Minh saw an opportunity to declare independence. He took advantage of the weakness of the Japanese who were being guarded by U.S. forces and immediately announced the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh created the Viet Minh, a movement inspired by both communism and nationalism. His goal was clear freedom for Vietnam. But France wanted its colony back. This led to the First Indochina War between French forces and Ho Chi Minh's Viet Minh. After years of fighting and many defeats, in 1954, at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, French forces were crushed. The defeat forced France to withdraw, and the Geneva Accords temporarily divided Vietnam at the 17th parallel. The North was led by Ho Chi Minh's communist government, while the South was ruled by an anti-communist regime supported by the United States. Early U.S. involvement. For America, this was the Cold War era. The U.S. believed in the Domino Theory idea that if one country fell to communism, others in Asia would quickly follow. So, America stepped in to support South Vietnam with money, weapons, and military advisors. But South Vietnam was weak. Its government was corrupt, unpopular, and unstable. Meanwhile, the communist Viet Cong in the South began growing stronger. They received supplies and support from North Vietnam through the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which passed through Laos and Cambodia. Escalation of the war. The real escalation began in 1964 with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The U.S. claimed that North Vietnamese patrol boats attacked American ships. Although the details remain unclear, President Lyndon B. Johnson used this event to convince Congress to approve military action. Soon after, U.S. ground troops were sent to Vietnam. By the late 1960s, more than 500,000 American soldiers were stationed there. What began as a small advisory mission turned into a full-scale war. The Vietnam War was unlike previous wars. The U.S. had superior weapons, helicopters, and air power. But the Viet Cong used guerrilla tactics. They hid in jungles, set traps, and used underground tunnels. For American soldiers, every village, every rice paddy, and every jungle path could hide an enemy. The U.S. carried out massive bombing campaigns, like Operation Rolling Thunder, dropping millions of tons of bombs. Chemical weapons like Agent Orange were used to destroy forests and crops. But they caused long-term damage to people and the environment. Despite this, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army continued to fight with determination. The turning point? In 1968, the Tet Offensive changed everything. During the Vietnamese New Year holiday, Tet, North Vietnamese, and Viet Cong forces launched surprise attacks across South Vietnam, even reaching the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. Militarily, the U.S. pushed them back. But politically, it was a disaster. Americans watching on TV saw that victory was not near. Despite government promises, public opinion in the U.S. began to turn sharply against the war. The anti-war movement. Back home, protests grew. College students, civil rights leaders, and even veterans spoke out against the war. Images of body bags, destroyed villages, and civilian suffering spread across the media. The war became deeply unpopular and divided American society. By the early 1970s, pressure was growing on the U.S. government to end involvement. President Richard Nixon introduced a policy called Vietnamization, aiming to withdraw U.S. troops while training South Vietnamese forces to take over the fighting. The end of the war. In 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed. The U.S. agreed to withdraw its troops, and in return, North Vietnam promised peace. But fighting did not stop. In 1975, North Vietnamese forces launched a massive offensive. The South Vietnamese army collapsed, and on April 30th, 1975, Saigon fell. The war was officially over, and Vietnam was reunited under communist rule. The aftermath? The human cost of the war was enormous. More than 58,000 Americans were killed, and over 2 million Vietnamese soldiers and civilians lost their lives. Millions more were injured or displaced. For the United States, the war left a lasting scar. It was the first war America had ever lost, shaking public trust in the government and military. It also changed us foreign policy, making leaders more cautious about future interventions. For Vietnam, the war left devastation bomb craters, destroyed farmland, and a generation traumatized. Yet, over time, Vietnam rebuilt and eventually became a united nation. Legacy. Today, the Vietnam War is remembered as a tragedy and a lesson. It showed the limits of military power, the dangers of underestimating local resistance, and the importance of public opinion in modern warfare. It also gave rise to powerful cultural memories, songs, films, and books that continue to shape how people understand the conflict. The war was not just about Vietnam, it was about ideology, humanity, and the struggle for freedom and identity. Why does the Vietnam War still matter? The Vietnam War may seem like a distant event from another era, but its impact continues to shape our world today. Here are 5 reasons why the Vietnam War still matters. 1. Understanding the roots of conflicts. The Vietnam War had deep roots in the colonial past and the struggle for national liberation. It's crucial to understand this history to comprehend the motivations and goals of those involved. 2. The power of ideas. The war was not just about military might. It was a clash of ideologies between communism and democracy. Exploring this ideological struggle helps us grasp the intensity and complexities of the conflict. 3. Lessons in strategy and tactics. The U.S. military faced challenges in Vietnam due to the nature of the terrain and the enemy's tactics. Studying the war offers insights into unconventional warfare and the limitations of conventional military strategies. 4. The impact on American society. The Vietnam War deeply divided the United States. Examining this social and political impact helps us understand the evolution of American identity and the consequences of prolonged conflicts. 5. A warning about prolonged conflicts. The Vietnam War dragged on for years, leading to significant loss of life and resources. It serves as a reminder of the dangers of becoming entangled in seemingly endless wars. The Vietnam War is a pivotal event in world history. It was a war about land, power, and ideology. But above all, it was a war about people.